the greatest journey you'll ever take is the one within.
Welcome to the Secrets of Being podcast. I'm Dr. Dawn Earhart Whitty, your guide on a transformative journey of personal development and discussions of universal truths. Join me and a panel of life coaches and spiritual leaders from around the world discussing how to handle some of life's greatest challenges. We will be sharing stories of love, faith, and inspiration with you, our faithful listeners, to live your happiest and most fulfilling life, full of purpose and passion for yourself, your families, and the world. We are here to be the change we wish to see. Let the conversation begin. Welcome to the Secrets of Being podcast. Today, I am honored to have Dr. Bill Clark with us. His resume is impressive. He is a speaker, an entrepreneur, a podcast host, an innovator, a scientist, and a modern day mystic. And on his website, he calls himself a weird hippie dude, which I absolutely loved. And I had to write that down because I wanted to. I love that. So welcome, Dr. Bill.
Thanks. And also you can mention published author now because I just got my first book published. So
Wonderful. We're going to talk about that.
yeah,
We'll talk about that.
yes, we are. We will. But thank you for having me, Don. This is awesome. I love what you're doing on The Secrets of Being. And so I'm happy to join in and have a conversation.
Well, I know you have so much to share because we got to have a conversation before, and wow, there's so much that we could talk about. But so I always like to start the podcast off with a quote. And I thought, you know what? You have so much on your website. I was going to quote you because there's a lot of wonderful wisdom. So
Well,
this is
thank
a
you.
quote from Dr. Bill Clark. He writes, "When your mind is free from limits and your heart is full of love and passion, you can create a life that seems impossible to everyone else." And I
That's right.
love so I would love to know part of your journey. I want you to explain. You are a scientist. How did you get from where you started on your journey to where you are today?
Wow, that's it's a long story, but it's probably I think I've been on this journey my whole life from the time I was a boy, and this is fresh in my mind because I'm working very hard to finish up the second book, which will come out in Q1. We can talk about that later. But I'm remembering back to these experiences that I've had over the years of my life. But I actually went back into university back in the 90s. Actually, it was late 80s to study science. I started out as a marine biologist, but I ended up in chemistry, and went to University of California in Santa Cruz, and then graduated there in the late 90s. But then that took me into the supplement industry now for almost 30 years, and all aspects of that. But the spiritual path. I was always there in parallel, but kind of operating. Like I started journaling in the 90s, for example, and started trying to do meditation then. And then It was 2000 when I had this kind of profound spiritual awakening that actually opened the door. It's like someone turned on the light switch, and suddenly my whole life and perspective changed about everything. So there were these two paths going side by side that were starting to converge to where they are really now, today, I would say. And That's exciting. That's exciting.
You had mentioned before that you come from a long lineage of people that were in the spiritual world, whether it was preaching, Episcopalian. I always say that wrong. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because you told me something that was very interesting about your grandfather's
That's
note.
right. Yeah. So for me, there is a rich spiritual inheritance there. My grandfather was an Episcopal minister. That's how you say that.
Thank you.
And No problem. And But that goes even back further. At the same time, in parallel, my great uncle, relative, was also Episcopal minister all through Florida, and then also my this is all in Florida, and then my great great uncle back to 1904 was also Episcopal minister, but he was the first bishop to Cuba and Panama and parts of Mexico at the time, in the early part of the 20th century. So it's kind of interesting. There's a rich heritage there. And of course, uh, I'm going to be able to share that in an upcoming book called Spiritual Inheritance, because I inherited my grandfather's sermons, almost 300 of those, and beautiful wisdom, the beautiful writer, very eloquent. I know where I got it's in my DNA. So, so excited about that project that's coming down the line, probably next year. But yeah, so there's a rich heritage there for sure.
So it's in your DNA. It's not
It
just
is.
something that you couldn't escape this if you tried. Um,
Yeah.
but you educationally you went down the science route, and that's what I really wanted to ask you is
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
integrating spirituality and science because a lot of
Sure.
times we think they're very separate and they can't exist with each other.
Yeah. Well, in fact, that's what I used to think myself, of course. And then because the mainstream media presents it that way. You actually present science as kind of black and white, and and I know this in retrospect because when I went into the PhD program to get my degree in chemistry, I learned that it wasn't black and white. It was very gray, and that there was little niches you could kind of go down a rabbit hole and do research on and that sort of thing. And there was so much because the way I describe it, and I don't remember who described it to me when I was at university, was that you have a sphere of knowledge here, and on the surface are questions, right? And as you answer those questions on that sphere, that creates more questions. That sphere begins to expand. So you're always in a constant state of learning. And so because of that, when you realize that dynamic, then of course, um, and you think about the spiritual side of that, that's about the science. Now, it's the same thing on the spiritual path as well, but there are touch points across all of that, which I learned. If you go back to the ancient philosophers in, I don't know, 15th century and the alchemists and, that kind of stuff, um, it was more the philosopher's stone and all these kind of concepts of that were based some on science, but also on spiritual principles as well. And so that kind of got digressed, I'd say, over that time frame, over hundreds of years. And then, of course, in the 20th century, I think with at the advent of quantum mechanics, this is kind of my perspective. I'd love to be around at the beginning of the 20th century with Albert Einstein and Niels Bohr and Heisenberg and having a conversation about quantum mechanics and all of that because they were a little bit philosophical about that as well because it was a new area of science that even Einstein didn't even believe it was could be proven or anything like that. Of course, we know a lot more today. But on the spiritual side of that, so I think it's come around full circle. I really do. When I jumped into after my spiritual awakening, it was probably I was writing about this and journaling about these concepts in that time frame. And then around 2012 is when I started speaking publicly about that. So I was part of a meetup group in Florida, and I was a speaker every week there. And that was my proving ground to talk about where spirit meets science. Okay, the intersection between those two paths. And I had a unique perspective as a scientist who had this awakening to understand and I could share with you tons of stories, Don, and experiences that you would like blow your mind and go, and it blew my mind as a scientist, thinking, well, there's really something wild going on here, right? And so it's coming around full circle. And I think the timing from a consciousness point of view for people out there are ready for this sort of scenario. At least that's the feedback I'm getting with my Beyond Limits podcast, where I talk a lot about these principles.
I love that. And I'm feeling that too. I'm seeing it more and more. And I don't know if it's because I'm just more aware. So now it's coming more into my awareness, or if it's actually happening in a bigger, grander scale. But I do know conversations are different. And
Yeah,
people just accept me
yeah.
as being woo woo and or what you're the weird hippie dude. But
Yeah.
so
Well, and I should point out that I used to keep those two separate from my professional career in that because people think it's kind of woo-woo. Well, tune into my latest episodes on Beyond Limits Where Spirit Meets Science because I'm talking about those principles and tying them to neuroplasticity, and faith as that principles and how we reprogram ourselves. And we're not talking about just positive thinking. I think you think about Back to the Secret and all that is about here's your vision of your vision board and you want to have these things in your life. Yeah, you can do that, but it's so much more powerful in terms of what you can manifest based on the scientific principles that are behind that. And if you think about that, you have limiting beliefs about what you can achieve in your life. You can change all that. You can reprogram that. It doesn't matter what age you are, where you're in your journey. You can start today and do that right now. And so I used to keep those separate. I don't anymore. It's integrated very much into my business principles and how I do my business and all my interactions with people I'm doing about. And I love that because it attracts energetically the right people into my ecosystem that are supportive of what everything that I'm doing. So really important that those kind of come together. I knew intuitively I needed to do that some time ago, and that's when I started to integrate the two together.
Well, I'm so glad that you did, and I love that you said you're bringing in the right people. If you've got somebody who's going to not listen, that they're going to be closed off to anything you bring to the table because it sounds hippie or woo woo, you know what? You're not going to be able to serve them in the way that they need to be
No,
served.
no,
But
that's right.
you mentioned earlier, and I wanted you to touch upon this a little because it's a very interesting story. When did you have your spiritual awakening, and what did that look like for you?
Wow. It was like the experience up to this point, this is 2000. And up to that point, I was journaling quite a bit. I was getting into meditation. So, in developing my spiritual practice, I'd say, early on, and reading a lot of different things out there, but, that were being published, or even ancient works as well. So, studying different traditions, things like that. And so I think the universe just decided that I was ready at that point and turned on the light switch, so to speak, where suddenly everything was illumined in terms of experiences. And I don't share the actual story of what happened because it's pretty mind blowing. But the experiences that happen after that, you can't turn it off. And so now it's like I'm open to another realm here. And I can share one story that there's no way you can negate it or be negative about it or say that's woo or whatever. But it's really one profound story that happened a few years after that that I like to share because it's a good example of, as a scientist thinking about it, proof of concept is like, well, there's something, it just tells you there's something more going on here than you realize. Okay. And if you like, I'd share that quick story about what happened with that would be great. And
Absolutely.
I was on a business trip actually. I was out in Tucson, Arizona, as a matter of fact, and I was arrived on a Sunday afternoon before the conference started on Monday, and I didn't have anything to do that afternoon. Nobody else had really arrived. I was just kind of walking around this nice resort place or whatever. And I was walking in the courtyard and I saw the Elizabeth Arden red door spa, and they really do have a red door and there's a spa. And I'd never done that before in terms of massages or anything like that. I wasn't at that time. I hadn't really gotten into that sort of thing, just meditation. And so I said, well, you know what? I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to go do this, right? And as a man, you think, okay, Elizabeth Arden Spa, is this really for men? It's like for women or whatever. But no, I said, no, let's just go do it. Who cares? And so I did the full treatment. I did the whole hot tub and then and went into the massage room. And as I'm in this massage room, I still remember the name of the massage therapist. Her name was Helga. And didn't know her, of course. I didn't know anybody there. I didn't live there. I lived at that time, I was in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. So it wasn't even in my neighborhood. And so somehow because I've had this opening or awakening, I know when I'm talking to people that I can feel that energetic connection of we can talk about these things, right? That people are open to doing that. And this is a long time ago, of course. This is like 2002, actually. So not long after the awakening. And so I had had a lot of experiences up to that point. And so as we're talking about it, I'm face down on the table. She's doing the massage, and it wasn't a lot of conversation. It was quiet. But then she raised the question about experiences like that because she was experiencing something. That's what started the conversation. And I said, and she asked me, how does that happen for me? Because I shared that I'd had some experiences. And I said, well, I start to feel a presence. I get goosebumps. I can feel there's someone there. And then it plays out for a movie in my mind. I can see it. And then as I'm telling her that, I start to see something that plays out for me. And I feel that was, as a matter of fact, there's somebody here right now is really strong presence. And I said, I can see them. And I described to her what I was seeing in my mind. It was like a movie. And it was this young man, long brown hair, was brushing his hair, smiling. He didn't have a shirt on, real skinny, tall guy. And he was just smiling, brushing his hair, and that was it. And as I'm describing what I see, she starts crying. And she realized, she goes, "Oh my God," she said, "that's my son. He was murdered a year ago this week." And I'd like, see, I still feel that today when I tell that, because that's something that really powerful, really profound, and really what she needed to hear that day. Because she had been asking that week, she confided in me after that. And of course, I didn't know anything about her. So this is strict. How do you explain that? I mean, how do I describe her son to her energetically? And I see the person, and then she actually has that experience, right? Well, it really does happen, guys. And then she said she'd been asking all that week. She revealed that she'd been asking all this week for a sign from him. She thought he'd been around the house. And so guess what? He came through for me at the right moment to give her a sign. And she asked, "Is there a message?" And it's not like there was any verbal communication. It was like a feeling. It's like, well, he wants you to know that he's happy and that everything's okay and not to worry about him. And yes, he has been around, but you don't need to worry about him, and give her some comfort for that. And that's the feeling of it, right? Of the experience. So, Dawn, I've had more experiences than I can count like that. But that one is just so profound that I love to share it because um, as a scientist, I think, how is that even possible? Right? I'm thinking about, and this is what I do. I analyze all these experiences, right? So it's not woo-woo to me. There's clearly something going on. And whether it's quantum mechanics, string theory, everything is energy, I could come up with a hypothesis for how that's possible. But that just illustrates the point that we're not just this existence here on this plane and then we die and nothing and that's it. No, we are actually spiritual beings having a human experience and not the other way around. And it's open to everybody if they want to step into that and have that experience. I was willing to do that. The awakening kind of helped that because I was prepared. I wanted to do that and I embraced it. And then I took the journey. I took the leap to do that. So there you
Mm.
go. That's a
Yeah,
story.
I just had chills down my leg throughout that whole story because I
Yeah.
haven't had that particular experience, but I've had enough where I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, there's way more to this physical existence than what we know. And what did they say?
Sure.
Like our eyes can only see what percentage, like a very small percentage of the spectrum. Our ears can only hear. So think about like beyond just our eyes and our ears. What else can we not perceive because it's outside of
That's right.
our
And
perception?
I mean, there is, and like I said, and some of these stories will be in my upcoming book. Okay. So, yeah, part memoir. And it's happened over the years, numerous things. And, we could spend hours talking about that. But it's enough for me to know that
Mhm.
there is, it's more than enough for me to know for years now that there's something more. So I could have jumped off my path at that point and done readings for people. I've done that. I could have just gone and be one of those guys I forgot the guy's name who was on TV who would read loved ones that passed on and he'd do John Anderson or something like John something,
Oh, there's a
whatever.
few of them.
There was a few of them, and I could have seen myself doing that. I even trained in how to do that, where I could actually have or worked with a medium that, she had books pulled off the shelf, didn't know what they were, and she'd read a passage to herself, and I could tell what she was reading, and so. And it's a practice like anything else. You can develop that. So I had numerous jumping off points during my journey that I could have taken a different path, but that wasn't my ultimate path of what I needed to do. It's really where I am today, to be quite honest. This is, all those experiences are coming together, and I've given over 80 talks on the spirit meets science journey. And so now that's all coming into the second book on geared towards conscious leadership for leaders. And so it's not woo-woo anymore, guys. It's the real deal. And there's something more to that going on. And as you start to talk to people who you don't think maybe would want to go there, and I'm not afraid to talk about it transparently, they immediately go there because they, oh wow, there's someone I can talk to about this because they don't want to feel like they're woo-woo. And I know what they're talking about because I used to be like them, right?
Yeah, me too.
And yeah, and so because of all the experiences, I don't care, I don't go around trying to tell people in hyperbole, hype about this, and some people let that go to their heads, and there are people out there doing pseudoscience and think they are prophets or whatever and stuff like that. That's not me. It's much more grounded in that sense. And that's the journey that I've taken in terms of understanding, and it's an asset. Okay. It's part of my spiritual practice. So it's an asset. I get insights for stuff energetically. Look, how many times have you gone into a business meeting or some meeting with somebody, whatever, and it doesn't feel right? It doesn't resonate with you and you don't feel good after leaving that. Well, there's an energy to that, right? There's something going on there that you're sensing. Okay, that's not something tangible that you can measure by any scientific method or anything. And people call it intuition, gut instinct. There's lots of labels for it, but it's everything that I'm talking about. The only difference is what level you are tuned into those vibrational frequencies to be able to receive the information. And so if I if I think about my writing, my poetry is hard to write. I never thought of myself as a poet, and that's my first book, Divine Whispers. And it's called Divine Whispers because it's divinely inspired. I I could describe the experience for that and show you how it makes that connection there for me and where the inspiration comes from. And actually, inspiration from the Latin means in spiritu means in spirit, right? So that's what that inspiration is, where you have an insight, an aha moment, or something like that. Where do you think that comes from? Is it coming from within you? Do you think you're all that you're figuring that out? Maybe that's part of it, but really it's only being open to receiving that information and it's coming from somewhere else. Okay. It really is. And you could say it's coming from that still small voice within you. Well, that still small voice is what's connected to everything and all that is, right?
Yes.
And it's just tuning into that. And meditation is the best way to get there in terms of a practice. That's what I teach for years, but it really does do that. So again, there's my other inspirational writing is one thing, but the poems are very unique in the experience of how that process happens. And so the compilation of poems that I just published is over a 15-year period. And each one of them has a story around it in terms of the experience at the time that I wrote that. And it was divinely inspired always. I'd be in a meditation, whatever, and I'd get a thought, and then I would know the words to write for the verse. And
Mhm.
once I captured at least one verse for the poem because I had the inspiration for a certain theme, then I could go away from that and come back to it. Sometimes I'd finish the whole poem. The other times I would come back to it and I could it had an energetic fingerprint or anchor so that I could meditate, go right into that same space and finish writing the rest of my thoughts that told that story, so to speak, or that arc within that poem itself. And and
I love
then
that.
and then rhyming, most of them have a cadence and a rhyme to them. It's intentional because it has a rhythm to create a cadence with you to connect energetically with that experience. So,
Yes.
and that takes practice to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that when I write my children's books,
Sure.
because they come to me. Sometimes it's in the shower. Sometimes I'll be sitting there. I've got the idea, nothing, nothing, nothing. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's all done within like an hour. It's like, whoa, I don't know what
Yeah.
happens, but that's how I work. I don't know how everybody else works, but I love that. And thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I heard you say on one of your podcasts, and I wanted to write it down because you said, embrace our gifts, skills, and talents and share them in being of service to others. And I love that you
Mhm.
said that because that's what I believe. I believe we're all given our own special, unique gifts, skills, and talents. But what do we do with them? Our purpose is to share those things,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you talk to about personal purpose and calling.
Yeah. And so I've been saying that for a long time. We're here to do two things. And I don't know if I've heard that somewhere or it's something that I can't even tell you. It's been so long that I've been part of my spiritual practice, so to speak. And if you think about it, we all have unique gifts and talents, right? That we're really good at or something that is, if we're, and even maybe some things that we didn't passionately, that we're passionate about, we didn't follow or embrace. And you should do that actually. But let's say you are doing all that. Well, then, okay, that's great. Now, why do you think you have those abilities in the first place? So ask yourself that and say, okay, is it just for me? Well, no, that's kind of the ego. It's a little selfish. No, it's not. It's really so you can be of service to others. And whatever gift or talent that is, it could be, and I like to use the example like you could be a sixth grade teacher teaching math to kids, or some scientist discovering a cure for cancer. It's the same energetically in terms of the impact on the
Hmm.
human on this human experience that we have. So energetically, it's like it's throwing that pebble or that rock into that still pond, and the ripples go out concentrically from the center. You are the center from that, and so that's how you're of service to others. And I don't think of it as. It doesn't mean that you have to be wealthy and then you can go donate and sort of that's great if you can do that, but that's not most people. Okay.
But
You could
that's
be
not the
a,
point.
and that's
It's
not the
not the
point
point,
anyway. It's not the
right?
point. Yeah, it's how you impact just a kind word to someone rather than a mean one is a very big difference energetically. That's being of service, okay? And having that experience to be that way and show up in the world that way authentically. And I always say this too, tied to that is your own journey, which is the greatest journey you'll ever take is the one within. And so and that can be a difficult journey. We all have programmed experiences, things that we happen, bad things happen to everybody, whatever, how we dealt with those, we're programmed a certain way, but we can change all of that. We can really unlock. That's why I say unlock a life that seems impossible to others, because I know you can do that. Yeah, I've done it for myself more than once. I think I've reinvented myself here, but you can do that. But yeah, that's a really important thing to understand as being the spiritual being here, having this human experience. You're here to serve others in some way, whether it's through a spoken word, whether through a written word, whether it's through the work that you do or whatever.
Art,
Could be
arts,
art.
or music,
Yeah.
or any
Yeah,
of those things.
yeah, music, absolutely. I love music, big singer.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So I love that you said that it's something that I believe too, because I do believe we're all connected and we're always making impact in the world. What kind of
yeah,
impact do we want to make? Do we want to be that person that's yelling at everybody, getting into fights, flipping people off in
no.
traffic? Or do we want to be that person that holds the door open, that smiles at somebody, that asks how they are, sees somebody that's struggling and help them? That's our choice.
Mhm.
But what are we
Yeah,
adding? Because we are always adding. It's just what is it that we're
yeah.
adding?
And look, we've all done that stuff in our yeah, and our as adults, we've done things that we're not proud of, and we've all done that. Don't shame yourself or beat yourself about that. Just know that you can change all that. You don't have to be any certain way like that, and you can. And yes, people have taken advantage of me over the years and of my kind nature and the way I am and stuff like that, and that's hurtful in those times when that happens. But now I don't attract, if you think about it, Don, if we didn't have all these other experiences, bad experiences, we wouldn't have any context to know what's really of value, right? And
Absolutely.
don't discount any experience that you had as that didn't happen to me sort of thing. No, but it happened for a reason, okay? You may not understand the
And
reason, right?
to grow
It's
us
it's
into our highest selves.
And it's not, I don't subscribe to the religious belief that there's some guy out there with a checklist going, okay, we're going to do this to Dawn this week now, and so she needs to do this. No, okay, it's not like that. But there's an energy to it, your experiences. I mean, because you are the architect, okay? You are the master artist of your life, no one else. And you take the divine inspiration that's always there and always available to you. It's in your essence of who you are. It's waking up to the truth of who you are and authentically showing up in the world that way. That's how you're really of service to others.
Yeah. And I truly believe in karma. I've seen it so many times. Like the energy you put out is an energy that comes back to you, maybe not in that one circumstance, but you're only in control of your energy. You're not in control of how it gets received. But again, it puts out echoes, just like you talked about the ripple in the
Yeah,
water. It's an echo that you put out energetically, just like that ripple. So I love that
that's
you
right.
said that. And again, I love all of this, but I know we're coming to the end. I wanted you to talk about your holistic vision for wellness and what you're currently working on that's coming out soon.
Sure. Sure. Um, so about beginning of 2024, I started thinking about what my next stage for in my career. I'm a multi-time founder. I've started several companies over the years. This is my ninth startup, and that's NutriSelect.ai. And I've been in the supplement industry, like I said, for almost 30 years. So my approach to wellness is really being proactive in your health. It's eating right, exercise, taking the supplements and spiritual practice, right? So this is what I've been talking about. It's my mantra for a long time now. And so I really, with the advances in technology, I've always been a tech nerd for a long time. I've been looking for emerging technologies and the way I could advance the whole research model around the supplement space because everybody's tried to put the pharma model into that. It doesn't work because it's not the same kind of products for numerous reasons. We could get into the technical details here, but the overwhelming problem there is that we have too many supplement products on the market and the consumer is confused. And I happen to know firsthand that a lot of those products on the market aren't really good for you or no, they're no good at all. They don't have any science to support them. You're just wasting your money. And I'm being very transparent about that in my industry. It's kind of a taboo of the people in the industry that talk that way. We all know about it. We try to focus on the bad actors who do bad things, but the reality is, even the good people who are multi-million dollar companies are producing products that actually don't have any scientific support. Okay. It's really weak and they haven't invested in doing that. So, in my view, they haven't done a good job of servicing the end consumer, right? This is the service to others piece of this. This is part of my mission. So, I thought, well, how can I change that? Okay, guess what? I'm not going to be able to. I'm a thought leader in my industry. I have another podcast, The Bioactive Nexus, where we deep dive the science. We're in 28 countries now. We talk about this worldwide. But the reality is to move the needle and shift the consciousness of an industry to change the way it works is going to take consumers deciding that, okay, I'm going to deliver to them a tool, it's a health tech app, where they can find science-based supplements, track their health progress in real time, and it will scale and grow with them as the user of that interface. And it will only show them products that are objectively rated on the science. We have a whole rating system that we do that. We're planning to launch next year. But the reality is that's going to change the consumer buying habits because no longer do you got to search on Google because I've heard it. I've surveyed consumers and they say, I'm tired. I search for hours trying to find a product. What's the best product today? And they don't know at the end of the day, in most cases, 9 out of 10 times, 99% of the time, I'd say, and they just pick something, they try it and see if it works. Well, they're not going to have to guess anymore. We're going to eliminate all that. We'll cut through all that noise. And so that's going to change the buying habits for consumers when we reach scale or when it gets to that point. And then, of course, that means the industry is going to have to change to adapt. I don't have to change the industry directly. I just give consumers the power to do that themselves. And we deliver it through my science team, the building our proprietary data sets and all that that is really based on science. No one's doing this, Don, in my industry. It's a $68 billion industry in the US alone, 177 billion worldwide. So we're going to do it in the US first, and then we're going to take it into Europe and Asia and other markets as well. So we're going to change the
That
landscape of
sounds
everything.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're building something better. Instead of fighting
Building something
against an old
better.
system, build something
Yep.
better. If you build
Yep.
it, they will come, which I heard is not even in that movie, but that's a different story. But
Actually, and some people discount that phrase, if you build it, they will come. No, you have to go build, you have to go do something else, and then they don't come from you just building it. I don't agree with that because that's not my experience with Nutrisite. I am building something like this, and I'm very transparent on how I'm doing it. And guess what? Everyone's coming, investors from all over the world, everything, because they see what we're doing and what the mission is. And because it's authentically coming from me. This is what I've got the experience to know where to go with that, right? I'm not just some 20-year-old tech nerd who whipped up an app and they couldn't do that anyway. They don't have the 30-year experience to understand the dynamics and nuances of that. So, good luck, guys, trying to copy me. You won't be able to do that because we're going to do something really profound.
And I think at the core, you wanting to be of service, being of service is part of your mission. That's going to be
Yeah.
the thing that just makes it take off. Aside from all the expertise and all of that, being of service is going to help you, in all kinds of ways. But I want
Yeah.
to, before we go, I want you to tell everybody where they can find you so they can connect with you and
Sure.
keep posted on what you're doing. And then also leave people with one nugget of something that you really think is important that you want them to take away.
Okay, great. Well, you can go visit my website. It's at drbillclark.life. That's easy to remember. And you'll find my books there. Everything about my podcast, Beyond Limits Where Spirit Meets Science, is there. There is also NutriSelect.ai. That's the business I just talked about that we're launching next year. We've already launched the company, but we're launching the app in Q2 next year. And that's NUTRI select.ai. So Nutri Select, I guess is how you say that.
We'll have that
Um,
included in the show notes.
yeah, that's fine. And then if you're really into the science and supplements, you can turn it into the bioactivenexus.com and we just did our end of the year recap last week for this year. It was really exciting. And more exciting things coming from both podcasts next year. And of course, launch of Nutriselect. The other thing that's coming, two other things that are coming next year that just put a pin in it. So if you follow me on all the social media there, I'm there on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and X. You'll see those links on my website. And I do have an upcoming TEDx talk. Okay. And so that's exciting. We've been working on that for a few. It takes some time to get a stage secured, lots of applications, but I'm super excited about that. Maybe it's in the spring, I'm guessing, when the events start popping up again for next year. And so stay tuned for news on that. Follow me on social media stuff. Certainly going to announce that when that happens. And then sometime in Q1, I'm taking the holidays here to finish the second book because I pivoted to that because the title of the TEDx talk is Integrity as a Frequency, and it's a snippet from the upcoming book. So that's pretty exciting. So what do I have to lead? Why not something from my book? Here it is, Divine Whispers.
I
I can
love
read
it.
there's a little short excerpt here that I love sharing. If you're thinking about moving into your spiritual journey, if you're even asking the question or even listening to these podcasts, you're ready. So I have a poem called The Mystic's Path, and it goes like this. To love and not be loved, such is the journey of the mystic. To see what others do not see, to know what they do not understand. Though a million stars may fall, the light shines for no one, while their path to freedom is hidden. A wise man knows the way.
Ooh, thank you. That's
Oh,
beautiful.
thank
That's
you.
beautiful. Well, thank you, Dr. Bill Clark, for joining us today. And thank you all for joining The Secrets of Being.
Thank you for tuning in to the Secrets of Being podcast. We appreciate your time and support. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with more inspiring content. For further inspiration, visit thesecretsofbeing.com and join our community. Until next time, stay inspired and keep unlocking the secrets of being.